We're back today with another installment of our Reddit stories, husband versus wife perspective, and us versus viewer perspective. It could all be different.
It could, and it has been, actually.
Today's a good story, too.
Oh, boy.
Of course, it's more family drama.
It's always family drama.
It's always family drama. Let's get right into it.
All right.
How do you say? So, am I in the wrong for telling my wife it is time she went back to work?
Okay.
That's the title. My wife has been out of work since 2018. She had a mental breakdown during her 5th year of teaching. She has been going to therapy since, and we started marriage counseling around 3 years ago. Reason for marriage counseling was because she thought I was pushing her too hard to go back to work before her and her therapist thought she was ready. I tried to explain many times that was not my intent, but realistically speaking, for me to keep up with expenses and retirement contributions, I pretty much have to take on extra shifts, which sometimes clock in at over 18 hours a day. And on average, I've been pulling 84-hour weeks. I've been doing this since she stopped working 5 years ago.
3 years ago. Or no,
yeah,
five
years ago.
Yeah. Sorry.
5 years of a lot of work. We recently had a fight because I had an extremely rough week and had the conversation again about her going back to work. She opened up the same line she always does. We do not feel it is the right time yet. She feels I've made great progress, and if I rush it, I run the risk of losing it, the we being her and her therapist. I told her I really do not give a F what her therapist has to say, and I am sick of you hiding behind her words whenever the topic comes up. She started to cry, telling me she does not like being this way either, and I am belittling her due to suffering from mental health issues. I replied saying I do not intend to belittle you or not take your issues seriously, but I am running myself ragged, and what happens if I have a mental break herself? Do you think I will have the luxury of not working? No, I will have to push through my demons. She said her therapist warned her this would happen sooner or later. I would try to manipulate her into doing something she was not ready to do. This is when I really lost it and just let it all out. I did not say anything kind. I told her she insults me for thinking what I am doing is manipulation. I told her I'm working these extra shifts so she can be home while playing games. I told her during this entire time you have not made any effort to improve on certain skills. I told her she can still not cook to save her life, and that I was sick of coming home after 12 or 18-hour days just to make us dinner, because her idea of making a dinner is pretty much a pre-made in the oven or ordering out. He's doing all the cooking and cleaning too. Among other things, that said, she stormed out of the house crying and shouting how I am a piece of you-know-what, and rather see myself comfortable versus her getting better mentally. So here I am. I do not feel at the core I am wrong. And while what I said was harsh, I think I did have to be said. So, am I in the wrong here?
Wow. That's a lot to unpack.
There was no mention of kids.
Yeah.
So that is a pause. There's no kids involved in this.
Well, you don't know that, but he didn't mention it.
So it's probably not.
That's a lot to unpack. What do you think?
5 years not working. And she leans on her therapist as, well, my therapist says I'm not ready yet. Well, your therapist has had 5 years of constant, of course you're not ready. Whenever I first read this, I was like, your therapist is getting years of payment, you know? But the wife, she's been out of work so long, she doesn't want to go back to work.
So, golly. I kind of feel like,
I mean, she had a mental breakdown 5 years ago.
And I totally understand that. That's 5 years. And if she didn't have him to fall back on, she would have to push through this situation while still doing therapy, if that's what she chose to do. And she has the benefit of having someone to support her for the last 5 years while she worked through issues. If you can't work and because of your mental condition, then I feel like you should be seeking out additional assistance, disability, whatever it may be, to contribute to the household. And if you are at home, finding ways to be able to take the burden off of the person who is providing the income piece of it. And I understand that this is a one-sided story. So we get one perspective. You can read his frustration
now. You can read it. Yeah.
But you get one perspective. And so that's the information that we have to go on.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't have anything against going to therapy necessarily. My experience in the past with therapy has not always been the most positive experiences.
I've done it, and I've never had a positive experience with therapy.
And I feel like for me personally, there has been I shouldn't say negative, but poor advice from the therapist.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
That doesn't fit my lifestyle or doesn't fit my goals. And maybe I just wasn't partnered with the correct therapist. But I agree with you that the therapist is like, ooh, money's coming in, money's coming in.
5 years or at least 3 years of therapy. The whole point of therapy is to move beyond that and not have to do therapy anymore.
And challenge yourself.
It sounds like she's not being challenged doing anything. And the therapist is her crutch to say, well, the therapist says I'm not ready. And the therapist said, you would eventually tell me that I had to go back to work. Well,
but okay, so the other side and the other perspective that I'm thinking of in this is that maybe the therapist has told this individual that she does need to go back to work. And because of patient confidentiality, the wife is telling the husband, well, my therapist says I can't go back. But yet maybe the therapist is saying she can go back, and she's using that as her ticket to not have to work. So I personally feel like in a relationship, regardless if you can work or you can't work, there are contributions that you can be giving to the relationship to take burdens off of one another.
Yeah. First update.
Okay, first update.
He says, I appreciate the replies. He left a quick update. Yes, I've been to a couple of the therapy sessions with my wife and her therapist. To be honest, it largely felt I was getting ganged up on. My wife brought up how I was always tired, so I explained I am working harder to maintain our home. When I suggested part-time work would allow me to work less, their counter suggestion was to cut things like saving for retirement and holding off on paying off debt and tackle such things after my wife gets better. Then I suggest renting out the house to cover the mortgage, and we downsize to an apartment. Her therapist says such a drastic change to her environment could have a negative impact on her depression and advises against such major life-changing events. During another session, she brought up how my suggestion she tries cooking to save money so we do not order out so much. She felt insulted because in terms of money coming in, I am making slightly more than our combined income. He's also working 2 full-time jobs.
Wait, I'm confused. She felt insulted because in terms of money coming in, I'm making slightly
more than our combined. So whenever she did
she
was
working.
Whenever
gotcha.
He worked one, she worked one, but since he's working 2 full-time jobs, he's bringing in more because probably overtime and stuff.
Right.
But and it says she felt insulted because in terms of money coming in, I am making slightly more than our combined income, and she was able to cover her expenses, so she does not understand why we're having such a hard time. I was honest. It has less to do with money per se and more so the fact of the amount of hours I have to work to maintain the income. I told her I pretty much am working 2 full-time jobs. The cooking or doing things around the house was dropped fairly quickly and became a critic on how I cannot manage money since I am making more. Yet I've never had issues when she was working with how she spent. More or less, every session became what I could do to help my wife. And I get it. Her therapist has to look out for my wife, and generally my concerns are small compared to my wife's. My wife is not a huge fan of our marriage counselor because she offers suggestions that go against her therapist. My friend has also suggested I speak with a lawyer to see exactly what my options are. After reading many of the comments and thinking back on everything, I think I'm going to do that. I love my wife, and I know she is sick, but I am good to no one if I keep up this pace.
Okay.
That was the first edit.
Okay.
So he kind of goes in depth about the therapist sessions, which answers probably a lot of people's questions.
Right.
So
it's interesting, though, how the therapist, the marriage counselor, and the therapist have differing views. And it sounds as though those individuals need to be working together because they are working with the same individuals, but yet giving different information. Different,
it's just a mess.
It's a mess.
Final edit.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the replies and advice. Was a slow morning, only had one field call, so I was looking over the thread with a colleague and a close friend. After talking, I decided to put in a request for 2 weeks vacation. Going to speak with a lawyer and see what my options are because I was young and dumb and much of her debt is mine because I co-signed and have a joint account. I will go to the doctor for the first time in 4 years and make sense of everything is still working as it should. During this time, my friend said I could crash at their place, so I'm going to take him up on that offer. This will be my final post here. Going over this, I made this post for all the wrong reasons. This is something that should not have been posted publicly, and I was petty for that. Even so, I thank everyone because a lot of what was said was what I needed to hear. I do not have much in terms of a family. Both parents have passed. Thanks for the tough love. Something has to change, and if my wife is unable, I have to do it. I am young. I should be enjoying my life. I am not even 30 years old yet, as my friend said. I aged so much in the last 5 years, it is scary. My friend showed me pictures from before all this happened. I want to go back to the person I was then. I agree I was wrong for what I said to her, but I do not regret it, as it was a wake-up call I needed. So it sounds like he wants...
It sounds like he has a pretty level head, at least from the way that he's been writing and the updates and everything. And, I feel like it's important to, and I'm not saying this in a selfish way, but I think it's important to put yourself first, because if you're not good for yourself, you're not good for anybody else. Mm-mm. And it sounds as though his wife has been putting herself first for 5 years in therapy.
And he put her first for 5 years.
And he really needs to find himself, what makes him happy, put himself first.
His mental health, you can just read it, it's being challenged himself. He's a broken man. He's exhausted. He's tired. He's obviously around 29 years old. Yeah. And he said in the past 5 years, he's aged a lot, probably from not much sleep, stress. Yeah. So I think it probably would be best that he walks away from that marriage, because I don't think she's going to change.
I wouldn't.
I don't think she's going to change.
For me personally, I'm not gonna say walk away from a marriage. I think he needs to evaluate what's best, and he needs to find himself. And if that ends up being that he stays or he leaves, whatever is best for him, I think would be best for the relationship. Because all that is happening is, that, at least from my perspective, is she is relying on him to support her in every facet, and he is just being worn down mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that.
I mean, from the last paragraph, he even said something has to change, and if my wife is unable, I have to do it, which means I think he's leaving. From the way it sounds, it sounds to me, he didn't say divorce, but it sounds like that's where he's mentally, where he knows that he has to go.
And maybe just that
scare, she might be, okay, I'll get a job again. Oh, okay, because if they divorce, she'll get like half of everything. She'll probably get the house and stuff, but the money won't last her for 5 more years of therapy, where she'll be forced to go back into the workforce again. Yep. And she'll know that pretty quickly, that I've got to I have to battle my demons.
And a lot of us have to battle demons and have to work through things. And this world is so riddled with anxiety and depression and, all of these things that we all have challenges and have to work through every single day. And, anxiety and depression come in so many different forms. And they show up at the most random times. I mean, sometimes, when I get anxious, I don't even know why I'm anxious, but something, has happened. And, that's a tough one.
Yeah. That's a pretty good one, I think, where lots of views could be completely different depending on,
Well, depending upon your perspective.
Your perspective.
And what you've been through in your life as well. Because, a lot of times your perspective changes as events occur in your life.
As you experience maybe a mental breakdown where maybe mentally you're broken.
Right.
And you can't, you're literally housebound because your mind won't let you leave the house.
Right.
I've never been that way.
I haven't been that way either, but...
Maybe that's how she is, where she mentally just can't leave the house, but I don't know.
I don't know.
So what are your views on this story? I think it was a pretty in-depth, very involved story.
And I guess with the question, am I in the wrong? I'm not sure that either one of them necessarily is the wrong.
No,
she has major work that she needs to put in, and it doesn't sound like she's putting it in.
She's a face her demons.
Right. I mean, she's doing therapy. That's great, but do the work so that you can get back to you.
Get a work from home job.
Yeah.
Where, she was a teacher, so maybe the teaching is done. Get a work from home job or something.
Even if it's something that you feel as though you can't work with somebody else.
Sell on Etsy.
Or, start a cleaning business. Or, if she was a teacher, maybe she can do grammatical edits on people's papers.
Or she can tutor children
Right. I mean, there's so many things.
A dog walking service if she loves dogs.
Right. Today there are so many opportunities just thinking outside of the box.
Be a DoorDasher.
Right.
There's no face-to-face if you don't want to.
Right.
Be a DoorDasher.
I mean, there's so many things that you can do to make money and take that burden off of someone else. So I don't think either one necessarily are in the wrong. But I
think they've each gone different paths in life, though.
I do.
And that's where he realized that their paths have forked.
Right.
And there's probably no coming back.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
It does.
Let us know what you think, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.